Bitcoin is a global market, and it's, I always say that governments don't ban Bitcoin. Bitcoin bans governments. If the U.S. is stupid enough not to get into the Bitcoin game now, and even though, as Senator Cynthia Lummis has said, it's late in the game. The U.S. is lagging at this point. If they really want to take that route and be laggards in the 21st century and let these other smaller entrepreneurial countries become dominant in the 21st century, I mean, that would be a terrible move that they could make. But hopefully they'll come to their senses. And most of all of the countries that have tried to ban Bitcoin so far have failed. And what we're seeing is a pattern of capitulation followed by a reversal. So they actively want to get into the mining of Bitcoin. They want to get into the storing and hoarding of Bitcoin. And that'll be the 21st century world war. It will be a hash war. Countries are going to be competing aggressively to get as much Bitcoin as they possibly can because it's the hardest money ever in history of humans, and it'll be the global standard. So it's like a space race of the 1960s. This is the hash race, which is materializing now. We see it. Different countries are starting to enter the fray. The U.S., like they were late to the space race, they are late to the hash race. But, if they focus and they get into it, I hope the U.S. does, and they can do great. But they have to change their mindset.
Yeah. Well, let's digress really quick back to the technology of some of the shit coins, because we're here doing the show. We've been demonetized on YouTube now for like 6 months. The way we make monetary gains is with this platform called Rockfin, which has the Ray token, and the Ray token is part of the Ethereum network. Now, isn't the technology of crypto useful too as well, though? Not just the fact that Bitcoin is the best monetary system, but when you look at stuff like the blockchain, we're election junkies. Can't the technology be used for other things like Ethereum and Matic for the future? Because if we can implement an open source blockchain technology into the tabulations of our elections, that is awesome. So won't some cryptos find a way to exist, even though the fact they are proof of stake?
Right. They're not money.
Yeah.
So they're tokens that can be used interoperably in and out of fiat. The Rockfin model is, I'm familiar with it, but again, it's built on Ethereum, and Ethereum is not secure and it's not stable. Nobody knows how many Ethereum there are. There's never been an audit. It's highly centralized, and transactions have been reversed. And like just this past week, we had a major hack. $600 million were stolen from an exchange, Poly something, that's built on Ethereum, and Ethereum is part of the network. And that's been the history of Ethereum. It's basically a gateway to scams. It's like every single major scam is built on Ethereum. That's the primary use case, is for scams. But I understand that. I mean, okay, can you streamline voting? Can you are there applications? Yeah, that's it's basically, there's nothing different than a spreadsheet. It's a spreadsheet. It's a glorified spreadsheet, and you can do a lot with a spreadsheet. And there's a lot you could do. The problem is that, okay, let's go to Washington, D.C. and say, hey, you know what? We've got this spreadsheet-enabled quote-unquote crypto, and we're going to make voting absolutely secure and unambiguous, and it's going to be a vast improvement. And they'll look at you like, yeah, but the way it works here is we're elected because the voting is fraudulent. That's why we're sitting here, right? Yeah. We don't want a good system. So then you have to say, well, because the government is basically is dysfunctional for a lot of reasons. You can get into it. Because it sits on top of paper money that's garbage. So, change the money first, and then you'll see incentives within the economy change. You'll see the politics change. You'll see people's attitude change. You'll see a lot of things change if you have Bitcoin as the standard, which is real money that audits itself every 10 minutes. It's self-auditing. Every 10 minutes, every transaction in the entire Bitcoin history is audited. And this goes on. TikTok new block. That's essentially what a block is. It's the result of auditing every single transaction that's ever occurred ever since January 3rd, 2009, and it's totally transparent. Anyone can see it. So swap that out for fiat dollars, for paper money, and then you have a substantial change in the economy as well as everything connected to the economy. And you have the Bitcoin community are a community of savers, not a community of spenders. That's very different. I grew up in the 80s, so it was always about the 70s and 80s. So it's always about shop till you drop, conspicuous consumption, lifestyles of the rich and famous. If you talk to Bitcoiners who are in their 20s and 30s, they're like, I'm selling my chair to buy more Bitcoin. I'm frugal because I want more Bitcoin. Now think about that. Ben Franklin said a penny saved is a penny earned. You can't have a working economy. You can't have a capitalist economy without capital. And you can't have capital without offering people a return on their savings. And you can't have a return on your savings with interest rates by the Federal Reserve are zero. Interest rates at zero or near zero is essentially an act of financial terrorism. I'm not trying to be glib here. In my view, it's an act of financial terrorism for the Federal Reserve Bank to keep interest rates down to where they are, near zero. That's saying the value of your work is worth zero. The value of your savings are worth zero. Your value is zero. Okay, that's the message from the Federal Reserve. Okay, are we as Americans going to take that? Are we really going to take that insult? That's outrageous.
Johnny, did you want to ask a question? Go ahead.
Are there any possibilities in which Bitcoin can actually be controlled or manipulated? I myself imagine like martial law being put into place and Bitcoin assets being forcibly seized in a worst case scenario. In scenarios I was just thinking about, right? And I don't think the empire is beneath that. I also see them like spending trillions of dollars to come up with a way to disable electronic networks, but I guess the ledger could be saved on people's hard drives. So do you see any possibilities in which Bitcoin can actually be controlled or manipulated by the government?
No, you can't seize Bitcoin. It's unconfiscatable. You have a 12-word seed phrase memorized in my head that corresponds to the coins that I own in the network. And anywhere I go anywhere in the world, I can walk through the airport naked, fly to Barbados, sit down, and there's my Bitcoin. And nobody can seize it. It's unseizable. And because the government does not have the computational power to hack the system, because the system's running on 60 quintillion calculations per second. To give you an idea how big that is, there's approximately 7 quintillion grains of sand on planet Earth. The Bitcoin network's running at 10 times that calculations per second. And it's the biggest, distributed network of computer ever, and it's growing quite substantially as people are fleeing the fiat money world. So no government at this point has the power or the money to attack it. No group of governments. So it's the coins are unseizable. They're behind an impenetrable encrypted wall. Will the government? So what will the U.S. government do? The U.S. government will attack it as they're starting to do in Washington right now. They're trying to figure out, well, how do we attack the on-ramp? Do we attack the off-ramp? Do we introduce special taxes? But keep in mind that the government runs on fiat money. And the only way they can keep going is to keep printing fiat money, which increases the attraction and value of Bitcoin. And so what we're seeing in the Senate, we already have 3 senators right now who are Bitcoiners. We have a 5th column inside the Senate. We have Bitcoiners inside the government who are working for Bitcoiners and against the government. They wouldn't say they're working against the government, but they are. So they are actively working to stage an actual insurrection. Not that insurrection of January 6th that people are all outraged about. There's a genuine insurrection going on in America right now with senators and congressmen and women who are Bitcoiners staging a Boston Tea Party-like insurrection right now, because that's what Bitcoin is. And it'll spread like wildfire because they only operate on fiat money. The only answer to every problem in America is print more money. And so that drives the value down and Bitcoin up.